Believe it or not, next year marks the 40th anniversary of Bomberman, Hudson Soft's iconic demolitions expert who turned a simple concept into one of the greatest multiplayer games of all time. In those 4 decades, our bomb throwing hero has seen installments published by everybody from Nintendo to Sega to Ubisoft to Activision. With so many different Bomberman games out there, I wanted to take a look back and see what Electronic Gaming Monthly's review crew said about all the sequels, the spin-offs, and more. Now, in case you're wondering, EGM managed to review a total of 18 games in the Bomberman franchise between 1989 and 2009. This includes a wide assortment of action games, platformers, puzzlers, and even a racing game that were on a whole bunch of different consoles. From the early 16-bit days all the way up to the modern era, EGM weighed in on most of the biggest Bomberman games. What we're going to do here is count down the best and worst Bomberman games using Electronic Gaming Monthly's own words and scores. There's no editorializing here, I'm just going to focus on what the critics said back when the games first came out. So come, join me for this explosive episode of EGM Ranks Bomberman.
Bomberman Hero on N64. It's a new Bomberman.
Up first at number 18 is Bomberman Act 0 on the Xbox 360. Hardcore Bomberman fans like myself recognize only a handful of games in the series as being great, with the rest being mostly missteps. And Act 0 is the biggest misstep of all, more like a misleap, really. Where exactly is the logic in a full-price, single-player-only Bomberman game that requires an internet connection for multiplayer and saving stats? It doesn't even support single-screen multiplayer. The core game is still enjoyable, but no attempt was made to flesh out the single-player mode. And the camera is either too zoomed in or out, and hard to see without an HD TV, depending on the mode. Basically, you have to be really desperate for some form of Bomberman to pick up Act 0. Number 17, Bomberman Hero on the Nintendo 64. Bomberman Hero is fantastic, as long as you haven't hit puberty yet. The game's ultra cartoony graphics and, for the most part, easy gameplay may turn off older gamers. That's not to say that you should steer clear, though. The performance rating and collectible items up the replay, and this is a fun little adventure if you're in between games. The lack of multiplayer is a drag, especially after the disappointing battle mode in Bomberman 64. Number 16, Bomberman World on PlayStation. Yawn. Hudson's beginning to get on my nerves. They're milking the Bomberman franchise to death, and as a result, we're getting totally stale, unoriginal titles like this one. Bomberman World is uninspiring to say the least, with completely generic stages, lame bosses, and a 3D viewpoint that does nothing for the game but make it look a little flashier. The game's only saving grace, of course, is battle mode. Number 15, Bomberman Fantasy Race on the PlayStation. Although it superficially looks a bit Mario Kart-y, beneath the cartoon visuals, Bomberman Fantasy Race is actually a pretty strategic racer. Managing your weapons is vitally important, as is keeping an eye on your finances to open up new tracks, which I can't decide if I like or not. I don't think I do. If you're any good at this kind of thing, you'll probably open up the whole thing in a few hours, which is a bit limp. The 2-player mode is a bit crap too. Number 14, Pocket Bomberman on Game Boy Color. I guess it's kinda cool that Hudson decided to try to make a different kind of Bomberman game, but they forgot one thing: to make the game fun! Pocket Bomberman is a decidedly average bore-fest of a platformer that offers nothing innovative whatsoever. The only bit of challenge lies in the boss battles. Everything else seems like it's there just to pass the time away. To make things worse, there's no multiplayer mode. Yawn! Number 13, Bomberman on the PlayStation Portable. See, it is possible to make Bomberman without balls. So what if the portable bombarder's saccharine appearance lacks Act Zero's forced future crap? You don't need grizzled visuals and smoking bomber broads to have a blast, but you do need some variety, something this offering fails to pack. Don't expect as many options as in previous Bomberman games, or players. Only 4 peeps can make each other go ba-boom. Sure, it's fun, but it's hard to plop down your dough considering last year's Bomberman DS allowed 8-man frag fests. Number 12, Mega Bomberman on the Genesis. This game surprised me, simply because of how good it looked. Mega Bomberman suffers a bit from the control, but it does let you play with the latest assortment of items and power-ups. Bomberman is a fun game in itself, and its levels are larger and more complex. Bombermen will either love it or hate it. If you don't own the Super Nintendo version of Bomberman, this would be worth picking up. Number 11, Bomberman MAX on the Game Boy Color. The second set of Bomberman games on the Game Boy Color tries to take the Pokemon route, offering 2 different versions, red and blue. Each game contains different characters and missions that'll be unlocked by, surprise, trading with another copy of Bomberman. The biggest shortcoming of Bomberman MAX, however, is being unable to play battle mode unless you find another Game Boy Color. The ability to create and battle your own characters using the infrared port is a great idea, but there should still be link cable support to provide more reliable connections. Overall, Bomberman MAX is a quality title with a few shortcomings. Number 10, Bomberman Tournament on the Game Boy Advance. Activision was smart when they named this Tournament instead of Adventure. Seasoned Bomberman fans already know that the real meat of this game is the battle mode. Blowing your friends into smithereens is as addictive as ever, benefiting greatly from one cartridge multiplayer. Lay down bombs, destroy obstacles and opponents, and collect as many power-ups as possible. You just can't get more old school than that. Unfortunately, the main game, the one-player quest mode, isn't so good. In the end, the quest is dry, but multiplayer is plenty fun.
By Edison.
And we're back with number 9, Bomberman Game Boy on the Game Boy. 2D Bomberman is 2D Bomberman. You've played it all, you've seen it all. This one, however, adds a great new idea, the ability to choose how you want to beat each level. Depending on which option you pick, you get to play the level in a unique fashion, greatly adding variety and replay. The game is also challenging, so veterans won't get bored. Bomberman on the go? Hey, you won't find me complaining. Number 8, Bomberman on the Nintendo DS. Ubisoft's promise of 100 puzzle-filled stages in this latest Bomberman adventure is misleading. Yes, the single-player mode does feature 100 stages to play, but to call them puzzle-filled is an insult. Aside from the boss battles, not one of these stages offers any kind of depth or variety. 10-year-old Bomberman games were more interesting. Multiplayer, however, delivers. 8-player wireless play rocks, and this version's got more modes, options, and levels than any other in recent memory. As a multiplayer party game, Bomberman DS simply can't be beat. Number 7, Bomberman Party Edition on the PlayStation. You just can't keep a good Bomberman down. After a few disappointing appearances on the Nintendo 64 and the isometric Bomberman World on PlayStation, the series has returned to its roots: quirky, simple, and highly addictive gameplay. Party Edition proves that top-down bombing is the only way to go. And if you've played any of the Super Nintendo games, then you already know what to expect. It would have been nice to have more multiplayer levels, or at least one plane level. Otherwise, the only weak link is the atrocious single-player mode, which bears little to no resemblance to Super Bomberman. Party Edition isn't the best version of Bomberman in the world, but at least it's what Bomberman should be. Number 6, Bomberman 64 on the Nintendo 64. Bomberman 64 looks exactly like how I'd picture Bomberman in 3D. But in my book, certain games should stay 2D, and the B-Man series is no exception. The one-player game is fairly decent. The third dimension gives the developers much more room to be creative here. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for the multiplayer game. The 2D games are much more exciting and frantic. The game could also have used more multiplayer maps. Number 5, Bomberman 93 on the Turbo Duo. Excellent! After several 5-player head-to-head matches, I must give Bomberman 93 the first nomination for the most addictive game of the year. This game has so much strategy. It's my pick for the best multiplayer game ever. While single-player games are very good, the Versus mode is the best, even against the computer. Number 4, Bomberman Generation on the GameCube. Describing Bomberman Generation as cute would be a gross understatement. But don't write it off because it looks like something for your little bro. What lies under the surface is a game with lots of replay and originality. Some cool twists on what you might expect from the platform-style single-player mode include a wide variety of puzzles and Pokemon-style Cherubomb, whose specialized bombs are essential for getting through levels. And with 2 bosses per world and no mid-stage saves, you're gonna need all the help you can get. Multiplay? Better than ever with its 2D, 3D view, new and old-school game types, and addictive Bomberman genius. Party on! Number 3, Bomberman Online on the Dreamcast. All it took was some 4-player Bomberman Online sessions starring 3 rambunctious dudes and 1 frantic female, and the EGM house exploded into quite a bomb-anza. With adrenaline-busting levels for your couch potato compadres, challenging computer AI for solo styling, and of course online bombing, Bomberman Online is literally one big blast after another. Keep in mind, though, that the online in Bomberman Online is really what you make of it. With high replay value in both single and multiplay, onlining feels more like a bonus to the game rather than a defining feature. But who cares? Either way you swing it, Bomberman Online offers puzzles and party game lovers a lot of bomb for their buck. Number 2, Super Bomberman on the Super Nintendo. Super Bomberman must be the most addictive game since Tetris. The one-player game is above average, but the multiplayer mode is truly great. The many new icons and colorful backgrounds are all great enhancements. This is one game that you won't be able to put down for hours. Super Bomberman rules. If you haven't tried Super Bomberman, then I suggest you do. It may look like a stupid game, but believe me, it's cool. And finally, at number 1, Saturn Bomberman on the Saturn. What can I say? It's a Bomberman game, and it's a sin not to love these multiplayer masterpieces. The Saturn version is the best one yet, mainly because of its 8 to 10 player modes. There's just something so perfect, so chaotic about trying to blow up 9 other screaming people who are all crowded in front of one TV. There's even an option to launch bombs from the sidelines when you die, so everyone can play until the end.
By Hudson Soft Bomberman 乗り抜け飛び抜けキックパンチストレス解消4月のリッパチスリル抜けタイタンボンバー買わなきゃハドソン
Hey, thanks for watching me take a look at these classic reviews. If you're also into old school magazines and reviews, then you'll be happy to know that we have a ton of shows looking at those very topics. I'm talking about full playlists about EGM, Next Generation, Super Play, Nintendo Power, Die Hard Game Fan, and more. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite Bomberman game? Personally speaking, this is one of those times where I feel like EGM pretty much got it right. It's hard to beat Super Bomberman and Sega Bomberman. They're definitely tops in my book. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we have a bunch of reviews coming out, plus a big announcement where I'm going to unveil the holiday series. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.